Blog Talk Radio.
Om Shabbat Shalom, Holy Way of the Most High. Om Shabbat Shalom, I sense your presence. Om Shabbat Shalom, Holy Way of the Most High. Om Shabbat Shalom, I sense your presence. I sense your presence. And I am the light within your soul. In the essence of truth and right, love makes the circle whole. And here we stand in line, waiting for some sacred sign. But to find the balance is the purpose of this time. To restore the balance of the universal mind. And in the presence of my Lord of light and love, everything I see aspiring to be free. And when I call to thee, and come on bended knee, surrender to the all-pervading light and love. Reflections of the one surrounding me with love. And I sense your presence. I sense your presence. I sense your presence. I sense your presence. Within and without, above and below, yeah. East, west, north, and south, I sense your presence. Without and within, below and above, yeah, yeah. East, west, north, and south, I sense your presence. I sense your presence. In the presence of my Lord of light and love, everything I find in tune with the divine. And here we stand in line, waiting for some sacred sign. But to find the balance is the purpose of this time. To restore the balance of the universal mind. And I am the light within your soul. In the essence of truth and right, love makes the circle whole. And when I call to thee, and come on bended knee, surrender to the all-pervading light and love. Reflections of the one surrounding me with love. For to find the balance is the purpose of this time. To restore the balance of the universal mind. And I sense your presence. I sense your presence. I sense your presence. I sense your presence. Om Shabbat Shalom, Holy Way of the Most High. Om Shabbat Shalom, I sense your presence. Om Shabbat Shalom, Holy Way of the Most High. Om Shabbat Shalom, I sense your presence. Om Shabbat Shalom, Holy Way of the Most High. Om Shabbat holy angel of the Most High. Om Shabbat Shalom, I sense your presence. I sense your presence.
Thank you for joining me tonight here on Activating Compassion in the Midnight Hour. My name is Jessie Ann Nichols George, and I am your hostess tonight. The music you were listening to there at the beginning of the show is I Sense Your Presence. It's by Shem Shai, a group that I got to know when I was living in the Arizona area, and of course they're one of those that have gone on to expand, and they're now doing concerts worldwide. And I just want to extend a welcome, whether you're joining us for the first time or whether you've listened to our shows in the past and you're coming back and joining us for yet another show here at Activating Compassion in the Midnight Hour. And what I do here is I look at different ways that compassion exists in our lives. I look at how to remove our blocks, resistances, frustrations, and more. And sometimes I'm discussing different aspects of compassion, how it works in our life, how it fits in our life, and how it affects our life. And some weeks I'm doing more exercises or practical implementations. And then many times, particularly this year, I've got a lot of wonderful guests on the show, and that way you get to learn how other people's work works with compassion. So lots of great things. I also highlight different musical artists along the way. This year I've been very blessed with Stephen Halpern, Grammy nominee, and Peter Cater, who has been an 8-time Grammy nominee. And if you've missed those shows, I'd recommend going back and listening to them. There's a lot of great music and information in there. Also, I've just kind of from time to time, we just throw in random nights of things, occasionally a coaching night in there. So it's always worth tuning in and seeing what we're doing from week to week here. In my own work, I focus on helping people find and use compassion in their everyday lives. I've created the Genesis Clearing Statement, which some of you have experienced on previous shows. And actually about a year ago, one of our other hosts, Kevin Baird, on his show interviewed me before I started on the network here. And there's a great interview of me working with that statement and what it's all about on there. So you can always go back and catch that in the archives. And I've authored 2 books, Activating Compassion and the companion workbook, Activating Compassion, the workbook. I've got 2 more books completed. They're in the process of working their way through publishing things right now. And I'll certainly keep you updated as far as when those are available to get your hands on. And then I've also created the Compassion Tour, which is a multi-state nationwide tour, including workshops, retreats, seminars, book signings, and fundraising events. And things are getting set up gradually, piece by piece. I do have an event coming up the first weekend of October. I'll be at the Matriarch Gathering, which is in Chimney Rock, Colorado, not far out of Durango. And that's going to be a fantastic weekend. They still have a few slots left. If anybody's interested in getting in on that, you can go to thematriarchgathering.com. And also I've got a taping going on in Santa Barbara for an interview for a PBS show, which will be happening the early part of March. And that is available if people want to come and sit in on the taping for that. So lots of great things coming up. There will be more things happening around the California area early March when I go out for that taping as well. I anticipate putting some book signings and probably some workshops in at that time. Now, just a reminder, if you enjoy the show, make certain you share it with your family, friends, significant others, those social connections out there. That's always great people to share it with, because oftentimes there's somebody sitting out there in your network that is looking for a show exactly like this or looking for this particular information, and you don't know until you share it. So it's worth making that share on it. And they can just use the same link to come into the show for the archive as you did to come in here tonight for the live show. So it's nice and easy that way. Also, there's 2 places that they can find the archive shows on my website, and that is Jessie Ann Nichols George 1. That's the number 1.com. And if you go to the page that says Jessie Ann Nichols George under the Main Street Universe section, you'll find the page there, all the archive shows there, as well as at facebook.com/activatingcompassion/notes, and all the shows are archived there as well. Now, before I get started on things, those of you that have listened to the show before, you know that I like to delve into the 72 Names of God by Yehuda Berg, and he is a Kabbalah teacher and master. And I love Kabbalah. I love Yehuda's work because he works the way I work, which is taking complex subjects and topics and concepts and bringing them into everyday life and terms. And what I do is I randomly open to something in his book, because I always find when I randomly open, I seem to get just a very appropriate message for some reason. It's part of kind of a little divination thing that's used sometimes too. If you just randomly open into a book and you manage to get a message that way that seems to apply to what you're asking or what's going on. And it seems like it always applies to the show. So let's see what we've got here tonight. And looks like our message for tonight is eradicate plague. And I think this one's going to be really interesting as we get into this, because I have a feeling this works very good with some of the techniques that are going to be shared with us tonight by our guest. And the message on this goes, the Kabbalists tell us that the concept of plague has a wider meaning than the biblical hailstones, frogs, and darkness. The plagues that appear in our generation are far more subtle and deceptive. No need to feel paralyzed and hopeless. We can remove plagues at their seed. And he goes on for his insight here. Today, 4,000 teens started smoking. In the next 3 minutes, a woman will be diagnosed with breast cancer. 1/3 of the world is now infected with tuberculosis. In the next 12 months, over 180,000 men will be afflicted with prostate cancer. Before finishing elementary school, the average American child will have seen 8,000 murders on TV. In the next 60 seconds, 12,000 tons of carbon dioxide will be pumped into the atmosphere. In the next 60 minutes, 1,800 children will die of malnutrition and hunger. By tomorrow, 25,000 people will die of water shortage or contamination. Over 25 million Americans purchase nicotine products. 1 in 1,500 college students is HIV positive. 1 out of every 4 females has an eating disorder. In the next 12 months, approximately 13 million will be victims of crime. Today, if a dozen people in a single location suddenly fall ill, the media declares an epidemic. But when more than 500,000 people die from smoking-related illnesses in a single year, no one calls it a plague. There are 2 reasons for this. The deaths were spread over time and space. They occurred over the course of a year, and they took place at different parts of the world. The influence of time and space blinds us to the reality of modern-day plagues that lurk among us. This name is both the antidote and the preventative medicine for the root cause of all plagues that can afflict our world. So it's very interesting with this. And again, our guest has some great tools to help us step out of some of these things and move into more positive spaces as well. So I think this fits very appropriately to where we're headed tonight. Meditation on this is think about smoking, cancer, AIDS, pollution, nuclear waste, depression, heart disease, hatred, or any other plague that infects the world. Now, summon forth light to wipe out these plagues at their root. And with this message from Yehuda, again, it's titled Eradicate Plague, is our everyday version of it. And the name is pronounced Nun Lamed Kaf. It's Nun Lamed Kaf. And this is actually going to be posted on my page on the Main Street Universe tab. So you can always go back and read it during the week if you want to go back and grab the message and tune into that. If you're a visual person, you like to read it instead of just hear it, you'll be able to do that. I usually get it posted right after the show, but usually definitely within 24 hours. Now, as we're moving into our topic tonight, I've got a little bit of insight here for you to think about. and that is, have you ever had those times where you felt like you were running on a monotonous rat wheel, day in and day out, working so hard to manifest a dream, only to feel that it is so far away? Have you ever found yourself pushing aside what you need for yourself? Meditation, peaceful moments, time to watch a sunrise or a sunset or look at the night sky? Has your passion taken you over to where you are too busy doing to stop and notice the seasons have changed or to smell the roses? This can be easy to do, especially early on in the process, but perhaps even more so when we have gotten truly committed to our process and are growing but are pushing the limits of what we can do for ourselves, yet may not have the resources to hire others just yet. This also can happen when we become so absorbed by our passion that we forget that we have a life as well to enjoy. It is these very spaces that lead people to walk away from their dreams and passions in a state of overwhelm. However, what if literally a minute of time in heart energy could shift that? Does your heart have the ability to influence us in such an amazing and powerful way? It's my experience the answer is yes to that. And in many beliefs, the heart is the center of spirit. And we know that there is a time aspect known as God speed. And this is many times faster than the speed of light. It seems to me that in tapping into the energy of the heart and thus tapping into spirit, that it would take but a single instant to transform and change our lives. After all, we know that life circumstances can happen in a moment, and that can completely change us. And of course, this can be the case even more so where divine presence is involved. So it's my experience that conscious choice to make our shifts from a heart-centered place allows us to learn through blessings and disasters, or blessings versus disasters. And being proactive in our process allows us to move forward from awareness instead of blindness. So it shifts us from doing to experiencing. Now, Dr. Frederic Weidemann has tuned into this aspect of consciousness and connection. He's utilized over 40 years of practice in many different practices to create what he refers to as the flash shift. And he realized that too many people are running through programmed tunnel vision behavior instead of seeing what is around them and having time for life. In today's world, I have seen this with people who panic to take care of themselves and their families. They lead strict and structured lives and then wonder why things are unfulfilling to them and why they feel unsatisfied or depressed about things. The energy field of such people is heavy and has a dense sense of darkness to it. I then think of what it would be like to see people stepping out of the confines that they have created and see a much brighter and lighter world to live in. Heart energy brings us to our inner self. It takes the focus off of the material world of possessions and puts light on the blessings and gifts that surround us right in front of our face. This may be a home to live in, a tree, a flower, the things that we too often take for granted. Have you really thought about the amazing process that happens for these things to exist? It is so much more than a seed in the ground that survives its conditions. How much are you taking time to connect with your heart energy? And where are you too consumed with doing? Where can you take a minute out of your day and get an experience? Are you ready and willing to commit to more heart energy moments in your day and life? This week, our guest focuses on a component of compassion that is related to the aspect in my books of the hidden enemy. This reminds us that we need to look at the judgments that we are making about ourselves and our lives. And so many of these judgments come in hidden forms, such as following the programming of society, or I should do this and I should do that, and I have to stick with a particular format if I want to be successful. I am living proof by letting go of such judgments and creating your own organic flow that you can open many doors, not only to success, but also to yourself. I'm going to take a short break, and when we return, we will have Dr. Frederic Weidemann with us, and he's going to be sharing his work with the Flash Shift, which led to creating, well, it's actually the Flash Shift now, I should say, because it's been adjusted in its name a little bit. And the song that I have for you during our break is called Dia Harmonies. It's by Claire Hedin. And if you missed the work with Claire, actually I did an interview on her at the very end of 2012, and I encourage you to go back and check that show out on the archives as well. So this is Dia Harmonies by Claire Hedin, and if you'd like to check out more of her work, you can do so at www.clairehedin.com. That's CLAREHEDIN.com. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes.
Oh, dear, dear little light, shine forth thy beauty. You came, you went, 'twas brief and rare. We loved you and we love you. So thank you, yes, thank you. We thank you oh so deeply. And thank you, yes, thank you. We thank you for your visit. We know your time with us was brief, but still 'twas time well valued. You have a place in hearts and minds down here on earthly fallows. Your light will shine and dance you will upon the skies of spirit. We learn, we love, we touch, we part, we feel the circle's healing. So thank you, yes, thank you. We thank you oh so deeply. And thank you, yes, thank you. We thank you for your visit. Oh, dear, dear little light, shine forth thy beauty. You came, you went, 'twas brief and rare. We loved you and we love you. So thank you, yes, thank you, dear, dear, sweet in spirit. And thank you, yes, thank you. We thank you for your visit.
And welcome back. You are listening to Activating Compassion in the Midnight Hour. My name is Jessie Ann Nichols George, and I'm your hostess this evening. You were just listening to a song by Claire Hedin called Dia Harmonies. And again, if you'd like to find out more about Claire's work, you can do so at www.clairehedin.com. That's CLAREHEDIN.com. And I'd like to bring on my guest tonight. His name is Dr. Frederic Weidemann, and he's a writer, speaker, consultant, and coach in self-empowerment, professional performance, and personal transformation. Dr. Weidemann also integrates a BA in English literature and an MA and PhD in clinical psychology with somatic body studies, spiritual studies, a postdoctoral studies in body-centered psychotherapy, transpersonal and integral studies, cosmology studies, earth shamanic and cross-cultural studies, and he embraces and epitomizes the new paradigm of synthesizing knowledge from a variety of fields to create a new synergy, bringing fresh ideas to psychotherapy, coaching, and spirituality. His focus is on communicating these concepts in an inspiring and profoundly practical way. We are discussing his work tonight with the Flash Shift, a tool that he created to provide positive energy in under a minute. And you can learn more about his work at www.frederic.weidemann.phd.com. And he also has a second website here, and I believe I've got that at the bottom of the show description for you as well tonight if you look at that, and that is www.flashshift.com. I'm going to go ahead and get his mic opened up here. And Frederic, welcome so much to Activating Compassion in the Midnight Hour. I appreciate you giving us your time tonight.
Thank you so much, Jesse. I just really have enjoyed this induction that you've done for the last 10, 15 minutes with your music and your way of contexting things and your work with activating compassion. And it's just, you've set a wonderful energy already for our interviews, so thank you for that.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure, and it's a joy to have you here tonight, and I'm always excited to bring you in, and that's always my goal. If I can set a good tone to start with, we're doing really well. And I was checking to see how we were coming up to in the show on Blog Talk for live shows, and we're right up at the top of the page tonight. So we should have some good energy coming in.
Oh, that's perfect. Well, you've certainly set the tone wonderfully.
And, I would love, Frederic, for you to start off by sharing some of your background, maybe give us, an introduction to who you are and the journey you took to get into this work that you're doing now.
Would love to. And I think that in looking back on really a lifetime of work, I'm 65 years old and have been in the coaching and healing and transformational field since really kind of the early 20s, and went back for my PhD in my late 20s. But I think there was one pivotal event that I want to talk about for a moment, and hope that our guests, and those listeners can also relate to this, and that's that I think probably many of us have had a pivotal moment where we have gotten a glimpse of the presence of spirit. That opening song that you opened with was so beautiful, talking about sensing the presence of spirit and of all that is, and which is always around us and always flowing through us, and yet it's so easy to get buried in our tunnel vision and our human viewing, and forget the richness and the magnitude of the evolution that we're in. And that moment for me came in my early 20s, and I was kind of a young whippersnapper and a hiker and a camper, and I was in Telluride, Colorado, the beautiful San Juans of southern Colorado, and up on the mesas underneath the mountain of Mount Wilson and Sunshine Mountain, and I was doing a vision quest. I've used vision quest throughout my life as a time of just one of the most profound way to kind of penetrate into the heart of spirit. And I was doing a vision quest, and I was, basically kind of, I had my shirt off and was barefooted and kind of out in this magnificent wilderness. And all of a sudden, kind of out of nowhere, came this, the way that I could put it into words now is the sense of the unifying field. And that's a term from Einstein's work where he talks about the unifying field. I just love that concept, that there is one field, that is unifying all things. And that's such a beautiful metaphor for spirit and for evolution and for the evolution of our universe and ourselves in the universe. And the word universe actually means universe, or one verse, or one song. And the universe is singing this one song, this unified field. And I just got it. And Lord knows where it came from, out of the blue, in all of its beauty. And with that came the question, how can we open ourselves to this one song, this one unifying field, in a very profound way. And I know there's many techniques and practices. Thank God for all of the spiritual paths and all the different names of God and ways to approach God. And there's meditation, and there's mantras, and there's visualization, and there's you more than anyone know all of the different ways, and that question, that realization of the one song, and that question, that haunting question, what can we learn about this? How can we activate this in our lives? It became really kind of the question that I've taken into the heart of all of my transformational coaching and healing work with people. So that's one piece that I'll share with you, and I have another to share with you, but let me pause here and see if you have any thoughts or comments on that.
Well, and I was getting a comment in the chat room from Kevin that said, wow, great and well put. And I think that's something that you really honed into, this unifying field. People don't stop and think about that, how much ties into that concept that there is one song being sung. No matter how many different fragments that we have out there, they're still part of this one song. And that unifying field, when you stop and you actually experience that, as you said, you tied it in very well with the present moment. When you are totally present, you have that connection with that unifying field. You are part of that one song consciously. And I think so many people that have kind of lost track of what that feels like to feel today.
Yes, exactly, and that's where the flash shift comes in. And before I get to that, I'll just say one other kind of piece of the puzzle that was really important for me and for this work, and that was, let's say that everything that I've talked about now with the one song and the unifying field, let's call that, give it the fancy word, transcendence. That's when we transcend and we're able to open to that magnificent, open presence that's always there. And then kind of in distinction or contradistinction to that, or the polarity with that is, I'll use another big word here, and that's immanence. And that's where immanence is from a French word meaning, we're really right here. We're paying the bills. We're having to deal with crying kids. We're trying to get our work out there. We've got to deal with money and health issues, and we're really in the immanent world. And there's a beauty and a blessing to that too. We're not just transcendental beings. We're not angels. We actually have bodies and have chosen, if you believe that, in this way of thinking about things, to come here in a physical vessel, a vehicle that allows us to perceive and have five senses, and at the same time we can get so caught in that we lose the transcendent. Yet to live in the transcendent world all the time is kind of missing the point too, because we're here on the planet with plagues, okay, and that you talked about earlier, and with all of the vicissitudes and situations of life. And so I really, the other key experience that I had that shaped this work, the flash shift, which I'll get into, is I was had trained in my 20s as a body healer. I'd done Rolfing, I'd done structural patterning, Feldenkrais, and I had a small little beginning practice in Atlanta at the time. And I remember vividly, I had a woman had come for a session, and she was on the body table, and I was following my training, and I was having her, breathe in a certain way to kind of, and she couldn't open her breathing. Her rib cage was really contracted and rigidified, and so she couldn't open the breath, and I was like getting kind of anxious, because my program didn't tell me what to do with this, and I was trying to get her to try and like take a deeper breath, and all of a sudden she took this deeper breath and she burst into tears. And I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? I was in my 20s and I was new, as a practitioner and a healer, and I mean, this is, something that has happened all the time now, for many, many years, but that was the first experience, and I went, oh my God, what am I going to do? And I realized that at that point that I needed to go back and devote myself to the study of psychology for many years, to get a PhD, because it wasn't just enough to have people kind of transcend or transform themselves, because there's all kinds of patterns locked into our bodies, our psychology, our habitual ways of thought and feeling. And this is a very long way to say that on the one hand, I had this experience of God in the unifying field, and on the other hand, there was the woman on the body table, crying. And how was I going to unify those? How was I going to work with that polarity in our humanness, that capacity to open to transcendence, and also the need to be right here, right now in the immanent world? And so that dance, that flow between immanence and transcendence has been a very important part of my work, and something that I have, great respect for, that we're here and we're now and we're in bodies, and often with contractions, psychological and physical and otherwise, and yet we have this tremendous capacity to open to these larger vistas, these huge, big pictures, and feel God, feel magical moments. And so how could I find a tool, a technique that would give us that ability to kind of flow back and forth between those two worlds, if you will? So let me pause there and see what comments you have.
And, it's interesting listening to you talk, because you obviously have a very transformational and releasing energy in working with people. And I was thinking back and some of my earlier times when I had the store in California for a while, and I was doing some different things from intuitive work and energy work, and it seemed like any time somebody came in and had a session with me, I would just stick the Kleenex box on the table because
exactly.
They would just break down, and no matter what they said, when they came in the door, it was like they would just be crying, and people would be like, "What are you doing to these people?" They're always crying when they're with you, and but that is the nature of the healer, and that transformative energy, and the power of the release when you get them in that moment. Now, I have Kevin, too, was making some comments. So I'm going to jump back here and catch all of his comments for you.
Sure.
He was saying, is it possible that some of us forget about the unified field that have found it at one time, went through the transformation, then forgot about it as we evolve to newer levels, but we reach an awkward silence where something feels as if something is missing, Then, through meditation, we remember the unified field, step ourselves back, reconnect with the knowing that this has to be something that needs to be revisited. And
I think, yes.
Not something we can ever graduate from, but something that has to have a presence from time to time that sustains the energy for the person that we are.
Well, I need to get to know this Kevin. He's right on the spot. That is an awesome way to put it, and I'll just say it in my own words because I think it's such a profound thing he's saying there, which is that probably all of us on a spiritual path, and anyone probably listening to this to your work and is on a spiritual path, a deep spiritual path. And that it's so true because we've all tasted that nectar of the gods, and then the life situation comes and overwhelms us, and here we're back in the immanent world, trying to figure out money and trying to figure out relationships and dealing with our own inner critic and falling into judgment, and falling into our own plagues, whether it's smoking or some other addiction or those kinds of things. And it's true that meditation and tools like that can remind us and bring us back to that place. And yet what I have seen again and again as I work with people, and especially with entrepreneurs and solopreneurs and coaches and authors and speakers and practitioners, is that sooner or later it's almost impossible to sustain a meditation practice. I mean, that takes real discipline and commitment to meditate every day. It's amazing to try and fit that in to our life when we have to get up and get the kids to school or whatever, or deal with a dying parent, and so for those that can do it, wow, my hat's off to them. And yet I see so many spiritual people who are hungry inside for that taste, that re-engagement with the transcendental, with the unifying field, but don't have the time or can't take the time or won't take the time to meditate, to visualize, to do their vision board, to journal, to all the things they may even know gives them what they want. But it's just simply, life is overwhelming, and it's so intense, and it's moving at such a speed. And that's where the flash shift comes in, because what I've wanted to create in the flash shift is the capacity to reach out in about a minute with a certain kind of breathing and a certain kind of use of the heart, which we'll get into, and connect with that magic that we know is there. We've tasted it before. We could meditate ourselves back into it, and yet, in the middle of the day at 11:15 in the morning, and we've just checked our email and we're swamped with work, we may want it right then, and we can't go take 20 minutes to meditate, but we can take a minute, and that flash shift, that being able to shift to the unifying field, to God, to the magic, to the juiciness of the moment, in a flash, in a minute, is it's a lifesaver, because it's like a lifeline. It's like it keeps re-engaging us, reminding us, restoring us with the essence of what it's all about, which is that connection with the one song, with a feeling connected to that. So it's not just a thought, oh yeah, I remember there's God, or I remember there's the unifying field, but no, can I feel it? Can I re-experience it, even for a moment?
I think this is so important, and you touched on something, even all these people who are on these spiritual paths and processes, and for example, Kevin is one of those people. He's also one of our producers and host here, and I think he's going to jump in here for a minute on the phone lines. But it really is something because, and I think in these days and times, you talk about the speeding up, you talk about there being less time, making it harder and harder to get to some of these practices. I know I created a tool as well that's very short and that can be done in the background of doing things, because this is the movement that we have to go to with the lifestyle and with the emergence that's going on globally, universally, and more and more people feeling that need and that desire to so-called follow their path and bring their message out and to do their work. And they don't realize how much there is involved in putting that out there. And pretty soon, like you say, they're getting up, they're taking care of the kids, they're doing all these different things, and the next thing they know, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. And so it is a huge thing. I'm going to open up Kevin's mic here and give him a chance to jump in and say hello to you. And it's, your voices are very similar, so it's going to be interesting to hear those.
Okay.
Kevin, your line is opened up.
Yes, hello, and thank you.
Hi, Kevin.
Dr. Frederic, thank you for being on the show.
I love it. Thank you so much.
I so connect with what it is that you're saying. I am the guy who has been to the Guru on the Mount. I have visited the Sri Lankan mystics, right?
Wow.
And I'm at like the place of like nirvana, basically. I got the T-shirt and I wear it every day, but no one recognized the word nirvana except whenever I look at myself in the mirror, basically. So I don't really I'm not pressed with the meditations that I used to have based on the teachings that were given to me years ago. Because I've been there, done that, again, have the T-shirt, right? Yep. I can go, but then when you were talking about going to that place and reaching and connecting with the unified field, that we can never really be done with it, and that we have to sort of like return to it or be connected to it as like a source for energy or something.
Yes.
My thing is that I am, I have the ego or the attitude that I'm evolved. But then as I have that attitude and the ego, as I look at my ego and the reflection of my ego, I recognize that the ego is just speaking from a place that's superficial, and that there's definitely more to know until my last breath, basically. So my meditations lately have been where I just go fishing, and that I've returned to my hometown that's in the Midwest, population like 500, basically, and that there's a great lake that nobody ever goes to. I go out on the dock. I'm there all day long by myself. I toss the line out into the lake. It has the bobber there that has the bait at the end, and no fish really ever bites it for hours and days on end. But the meditation information that comes through and the things that I'm able to contemplate as I stare at that lifeless bobber on the water gives me such information and such power and such confidence and release about the stress and the worries that I have in my life that I'm sort of just at a peace. But the thing is that we have, or I know that and you're helping me to remember that I have to stay connected to the unified field, and that I stay connected to the people who are trying to connect to the unified field as well, and that what you're really rehashing for me is a reminder that it's not something that we can graduate from, but it's something that we have to revisit. And I just had to call in and say thank you and to share with you my angle from that aspect also.
Beautiful. I love your story of the fishing, and even returning to your hometown of 500 is, and coming off the mountain in the Sri Lanka mystics and returning, back to the immanent world, that you came from and where your people are, is part of that path. And yes, that it's the evolution. I'm going to go back to something that Jessie said a moment ago when she said that there is, because things are speeding up and because things are becoming so intense technologically, for one thing, but just on the planet, with 8 billion people now, and spirit is wanting to be connected to more frequently, more easily, more often, and in a flash. That is the evolution of our spirituality, to not have to go and sit in I'm making a big extreme now, in a cave in the Himalayas. That was a part of our spiritual evolution at that time, and now it's evolved to the place where we can do it in the midst of our lives, in the middle of our immanence, in the middle of our day, our work, our relationship, our families. If we can take a certain kind of breath and open our heart and feel that, remember that magic, those magical moments. Those magical moments, whether it's a sunset or watching that fishing, bob there, or being in nature, we've all had those magical moments where we're there, and where suddenly everything is at peace, everything is glorious, the good, the true, and the beautiful is evident, and those magical moments that we've all had in our lives are the precursor of the flash shift, because it's possible to intentionally go there in the middle of the day, in the middle of stress, and take a breath and open our hearts and use our minds and our intentionality to reconnect with all that is, and come out of the tunnel vision. You talked about the egoic presence. The ego, wants us to be separate and wants us to feel special and feel, like I'm really and so going beyond that egoic kind of demand to feel separate, and all of a sudden connecting and realizing, whoa, I am a part of this moment. Whoa, this moment extends all the way out to the edges and beyond of the universe. Whoa, I am connected to every single person, around me and on this planet. Whoa, I am connected. My body doesn't stop at my skin. It actually has aura and energy and fields upon fields upon fields radiating out. And whoa, the very intelligence of my body and my breath is all part of the spiritual miracle that, we are blessed to have on this planet, which is, part of spirit itself. And so all of a sudden to be able to shift in a flash from being a human doing to being a spiritual being that is suddenly experiencing essence and the essential qualities of life itself and the richness of life itself, even in the breath. mean, my God, the breath, I mean, the way that spirit, we breathe it in and out, and just to put our minds and our hearts with that for a minute and reconnect and go, whoa, oh my, I feel refreshed. I feel renewed. And now I can go back to email or, working on that project or trying to figure out where the next money's going to come from. But we've had that re-immersion with the deeper truths that we live in all the time.
Is it possible to remove the thread of the carnivore that is connected to the ego that is within us as well? Because that's what sustains our body and our blood and keeps the blood flowing. Like we have to honor our canines that are in our mandibles, basically. We have that side that we made an agreement before we were born to be able to sustain the flesh that is the vehicle that helps us realize the tactile experiences that is in this sphere that we're, existing in, and that we were able to realize hugs and kisses and hates and fires and bleeds and that kind of stuff, because that we grow from that kind of stuff, and that's where the ego thrives. But then once we have a chance to look back on those experiences, our soul takes a hindsight experience and lens of that and gains a great deal. So we have to ebb and flow between what the spirit or our soul gains as opposed to what our ego and the predator or the one that takes advantage of the weaker. Really, it's like you have the prey and the predator. We signed on to that kind of programming coming into this human frame that we did. It sucks to be at the top of the food chain and that we have to honor it, and that through meditation we recognize that we don't have to be 100% predator and that we can abstain from that experience, but sometimes it's absolutely necessary. What are your thoughts on that?
I like what you said, that there is a weaving. The word I would use is there's a weaving back and forth where we can come out, transcend for a moment, and engage with the unifying field, and then we dance back into the immanent world where we do have to have an ego, and we are in flesh and blood, and we do have to make a living, and not necessarily that we have to compete. I think it's possible to cooperate, and that's the way evolution is moving. But we do have to, in my belief system, honor the physicality of life. And so in the flash shift, one of the things that I teach people is in the flash shift, so there's a breath where you can just try it right now, you and Jesse and anyone else that's listening, where you breathe in slower and fuller than usual. And so just try that now, just breathing in slower and fuller than usual, and breathing out slower and fuller than usual. And I'm just going to actually put a count to this, and I'll explain that in a moment. So if you breathe in to 6 counts, so breathe in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then just breathe out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and try that again, breathing in that nice, full, slow, up to 6, and then out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, what I'm going to do with that is add a movement of the heart, so that you've got the breath, the spiritual aspect of the breath, and now we're going to bring in the actual physicality of the body and its desire to move, and everything is moving in the body, circulating, and lymph nodes and blood moving and circulating. And so try this as you breathe that slow breath. Just start your hands in your lap if you're sitting, or you're probably sitting, and so start your hands in your lap and just raise them up the front of your body up to the top of your head, and then just flow them out, kind of stretch out in the shape of a big heart. So again, raising the hands up through the center of the body, out the crown chakra, and then out to the side of your body in the shape of a really big heart. And so when you combine that breath, that slow 6-count breath, with that movement of the heart, you're adding now the spirit and the physicality in the same flash moment. And it brings those two worlds together so that we're integrating the transcendental, unifying field world of breath and spirit, but also the physicality of the heart and the centering of the body in a movement. So that's the beginning of the flash shift, and beginning to layer the textures in that makes that such a powerful 60 seconds.
Right.
And I don't know if we lost him there for a second. We'll see. But
lost too.
Oh,
no.
You're still there. Okay.
Everything went silent.
It went silent for a minute. So
intense energy right there. You just overwhelmed the electromagnetic world there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just put a pause on the electromagnetic world and the switchboard, I think.
Well, thank you, Dr. Frederic. I'm going to let Jesse go ahead and take over. Fantastic stuff, and I'm going to continue to listen. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Beautiful comments.
Yep. Thank you. Bye now.
Yeah, it's really great.
Jesse, were you able to follow those instructions or not? Not really.
Absolutely, I was, and I do these online classes for people, and I incorporate imagery and meditational work with it, and visualization work, and I actually use a very similar breath count. And I was kind of chuckling because I was sitting here. I'm like, this is very similar, only I do more drawn out, longer count with it. And when you said, now put your hands in front of you, kind of towards your lap and stuff, and that's right where my hands were when you said that, which is
right. Beautiful. And let me talk for a moment about the 6 counts. There's many, many, many ways to do breathing work, and they're all beautiful and good. And yet the reason that I've centered in on the 6 counts has a lot of scientific research behind it, which I want to share with the listeners for a moment. And that is, if you do the math, so 6 in. Roughly, don't have to be rigid about it, but 6 in on the inhale and 6 out on the exhale, so that's 12 seconds. And if you divide that into a minute, so there's 5 breaths in a minute. You'd have 5 inhale, exhale cycles. And what science has shown in the research, and this is coming from a book called The Power of Breath by 2 Harvard MDs, believe it or not, a beautiful little book you can get on Amazon. They are showing in there that with the 5 breaths per minute, that's 6 counts in, 6 counts out, that is exactly the breath that most harmonizes and regulates the nervous system. And here's what I mean by that. The nervous system, as some of your listeners may know, has the so-called sympathetic side, which is the fight or flight, and the stress reaction. When we experience high arousal and we get kind of anxious and we're up and we're doing and we're kind of in fight or flight mode. And by the way, we live a lot of our day, in that where the sympathetic part of the nervous system is more activated to balance. And what the 5 breaths per minute does is it allows the fight or flight to drop down and the parasympathetic to kick in. And so it has an instant kind of harmonizing of our nervous system, more so than if you did 4 breaths per minute or 6 breaths per minute or 7 breaths per minute or 3 breaths per minute. So it's just the way the nervous system is wired that 5 breaths per minute is the one that most allows that calming and that opening of the parasympathetic, the restorative, and the healing functions to kick in. And that's why that particular breath is the bedrock of my flash shift solution. So in doing that roughly 6 counts in, 6 counts out, again, doesn't have to be rigid, you can know that you are allowing that the nervous system to find its maximum optimal balance. And that's what's so beautiful about using that particular breath.
That's really interesting, and I'm glad that you took the time to explain that. And I could see other things on a numerological factor where 6 is very much a number of balancing and stabilizing while keeping us in a forward momentum. And when we talk about 6 in, 6 out in a cycle being 12 seconds, of course, that brings us into a number of divinity and trinity and
exactly
a whole level of connection on that space. And I was listening to you earlier as well, and you were talking with this flash connection aspect of, and I was thinking, spirit, God, whatever term you choose to use, it operates in this flash momentum. And
yes.
So it actually is this, what we're doing is we're actually coming up to, if you want to say, God's speed of operation, yes, which is very important in these days and times. And like you said, in these days and times where we have more and more stress coming in, I think people feel it more, the more they're on computers and cell phones and electronics, and because we're using so much more of this to communicate, it helps us reach out a lot more when we're putting ourselves out there and we're trying to do our work. And, there's so much more that people are trying to cram into their day. To get this synchronization, we need to be able to tap into, as you say, the parasympathetic system.
Yeah, in the unifying field, and I like what you just said, because that spirit or God or evolution is wanting us to be able to connect with it faster and faster, because actually you called it Godspeed in an instant. And there's a way right now without even the flash breath I just taught or the heart movement I just taught, where you, me, and the listeners can, if we just kind of intend to go to the unifying field and to rest in it for a moment, to bask in it for a moment, to realize it for a moment, to take our consciousness and extend our consciousness out of our smaller, more contracted consciousness and expand it. Boom, like a sphere that just rushes out in all directions, and realizing that all of that space and that sphere that's expanding like in an instant is filled with the life force, is filled with spirit, is filled with evolution, is filled with the unifying field, is where we came from. It is the source. And so being able to just instantly connect with that is it's not only life-giving, but it is the advanced evolutionary force at work, wanting us, leading us I really think that the flash shift, it's not just that I created the flash shift, it's that the flash shift is an evolutionary force that is coming into our consciousness as spiritual beings now, because evolution and spirit has moved to the place where it wants this. Yes, it's fine. And meditating is great. It also wants us to get it in a flash, and there's something, there's a whole understanding about God and spirituality that God wants to know itself. That's what God is doing with the universe. Why would God create a universe? Because it wanted to come into form, into limitation, and still be able to experience its limitlessness. It's the ultimate paradox of being in form but being able to transcend form at the same time. So without a universe, God was just fine as a formless being, right? But it wanted more. It wanted to come in and actually experience itself through form. And great scholars like Brian Swim and some of the cosmology, spiritual, and Matthew Fox and people like that, the Earth spirituality, are saying, realizing and putting beautiful words to the fact that really evolution is wanting to know itself. And for example, just to take one amazing moment in the history of evolution, there was a moment when there were suddenly on the whole planet there were eyes. These forms, these tadpoles, these amoebas. At a point there were eyes, and suddenly evolution could see itself. I mean, that was a monumental moment in the history, in the epic history of evolution, of the universe knowing itself. It's like suddenly it could see itself with eyes. And so this, what we're talking about now, is an extension of that, to be able for the universe to know itself through us in a flash is something we're moving towards. And so as you participate in the flash shift, and you do it during the day, 3, 5, 10, 20 times, you take that minute to breathe in this manner that I'm speaking and to do the heart movement. And I want to talk about that more in a minute. You are participating in the most advanced spiritual evolutionary need and force on the planet right now.
And it's such an interesting concept that you're bringing up. I think, one, we forget to take that time to tap into that expansion and to tune into our energy and our part that is beyond our physical body. I think so many times we get in our hurried world and we get locked in like we're just what this body is, and we forget that we're more. And I love this concept that you have that is God creating eyes in order to look at himself or itself.
Yes.
That aspect that we're really his eyes looking back at him, that he can see what he is.
Exactly.
That's kind of
Isn't that a beautiful thing to kind of contemplate that?
That's a really interesting thing to contemplate, and it brings that whole aspect of how we really are God into perspective in a way.
Yes. And another way that I like to think about this that's in line with what we're talking about is that we are the fingertips of God. So So God is through our fingertips, through our touch. Kevin was saying, we touch things in the world. We interact. We have hands. We have an opposable thumb that can grasp things. That there's no coincidence in that. That's God wanting to grasp itself, to touch itself, to be it's through our fingertips. That it's knowing itself. It's just that without the flash shift, without the consciousness that that's what's happening, we lose sight of the fact of the miracle and the richness of that, and we're down, buried in our computer, hunched over, stressing about how am I going to get through my emails, and how am I going to have time for my project, and when am I going to write that book? Bless your heart, you've written several books, Jesse, that's awesome. And how am I going to get my message out there? And we go into what I love to just talk about, you referred to it earlier, as tunnel vision. We're in a tunnel, and all we can see is this narrow, the vision that is inside the tunnel. And we've completely lost sight, touch, heart connection, engagement with the vastness of the big picture that's flowing through us as our breath, as our heart, as our intentionality, as the presence, the power of now that Tole talks about, the power of now. And so, we're human doings. And not only are we human doings, but we've got a forcing current that we add to our stress. So we're going to force something to happen. We're going to make it happen. We've been taught that to succeed, you have to make it happen, and you have to go for it, and you have to compete, and all this bullshit, that is the programming that our society has given us about success, as opposed to in breaking out of that tunnel vision, picking our heads up out of the computer at 2:42 in the afternoon and going, wait a minute, I'm going to do a flash shift for 60 seconds. I'm going to breathe in the manner that we're talking about here, the 6 counts. I'm going to make that movement with my hands in the heart shape that opens me up, and feel that luxurious stretch and that opening of my energy that heart shape makes. And I'm going to regulate my nervous system, and I'm going to open up to the now and to the power of gratitude and the miracle that I just lost because I was in my tunnel vision.
Yeah, absolutely. It really is something to stop and have to think about that, and it is
so basically, what I'm proposing here is that it's possible throughout your day, in under a minute, to engage in the flash shift, no matter what you're doing, no matter how lost you are, no matter how contracted and tunnel visioned you are in the immanent world, to pull up and out of it for a moment and to have that refreshing, restorative, life-generating, juicy reconnection with all that is. And our place in that and connecting with that, and then back into the immanent world, back into your project, but that coming out and opening up to that life force that comes from the bigger picture and from the truth, the good, the true, and the beautiful that's always there inside us and around us, and recognizing that and basking in that for a minute is a very, very easy, fun, simple, powerful way to flow through our day.
It really is, and breaking it up over multiple times in a day, I think, is so important, even over doing 20 minutes straight, because it's kind of like they say you should be getting 20 hugs a day. So for all those germophobics, they can now breathe relief that they can do this instead and get their hugs from spirit instead in 1 minute. And I was kind of tuning that in. I'm like, this is kind of equivalent to those 20 hugs, only we're getting that from spirit. And the aspect that it literally just takes this minute doesn't interfere, like you say, with anything that we're really doing. But so many times during the day when we're in that tunnel vision, we're also confused and anxious and worried. And, of course, those are the states we get in when we're disconnected. And if we take this 1 minute, you could just save yourselves about 20 minutes of searching on the Internet to find an answer, because as soon as you reconnect, the answers flow automatically.
Let me piggyback on that, because that's such a powerful thing that you're saying, and it's that in my own words, I'll say it like when we're in that tunnel vision and we're stressing and we've got an underlying sense of anxiety, and there's an overlaying sense of forcing. I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to push through. That blocks spirit from being able to inspire us, and it's truly when we can break the lock of that default mode of forcing and anxiety and kind of pushing, pressured, harried, striving, and we can break the lock of that with a flash shift and suddenly open our energy back up with this heart movement. That I hope you're doing it right now as I'm talking about it, and the listeners will just make that beautiful heart movement and take a deep breath. And all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, there's such a bigger picture here I had forgotten, and it's that bigger picture that will, at the very least, it will renew you. But even more often, it will give you an answer. And all of a sudden, you don't have to force things anymore, and the anxiety drops, and you've got a solution that has come through. Whether it's I need to stop doing email right now and get onto my project, or my priority is to stand up and get a glass of water and stretch and take a break, or you know what? I just got the answer to something that's been gnawing at me for weeks. And so it's in that opening up to the larger picture that we get the inspiration and the wisdom that's always available to us. But when we're tunneled down, go ahead.
Oh, go right ahead and finish your thought.
No, I want to hear you.
Well, I was going to say, too, there is the physiological aspects of it where breath is going to oxygenate the system, and so that's going to kind of wake us up a little bit, get us a little more alert, and help our brain. And I know myself, I used to have extreme test anxiety, and it was a really challenging thing. And that's part of when I delved really heavy into meditation and visualization work years ago, because I found that what happens is when we're in that tunnel vision, we're stressed and we're worried and anxious and all these things, our brain literally shuts down to where the information cannot pass from our subconscious, for example, to our conscious. So the information is there, but we can't get it. And it only surfaces when we allow ourselves to relax. And matter of fact, I use some similar techniques, not this exact one. I wish I had this one back in college because it was much faster than what I was using. But I would get to a point where I would only study so much, and then I would take a certain amount of time prior to my class, and I would go into meditation and visualization, and I would not walk into class until like 5 minutes before the class would start. And
right.
I would be completely relaxed, and I went from the probation list to the dean's list in one semester doing that.
Wow, that's wonderful. That's exactly right. And when you talk about, the oxygenation of the blood from the breath and sometimes freeing the lock, in the brain so the unconscious and the conscious can communicate, there's another aspect of that I want to highlight here in the heart movement that I'm sharing with you and the listeners, and that is for any people that have done energy work or acupuncture in Chinese medicine, and the flow of the meridians and the working with the aura and the chakras, all that the subtle anatomy of the body that falls under the heading of energy medicine these days, that heart movement is one that in acupuncture is known as stimulating the radiant circuitry. And another term for it in Chinese medicine is the extraordinary circuitry. And it's known in Chinese medicine that when you make that heart movement over your body like that, you're bringing the energy up the central, it's called the governing meridian of the front of the body, and then out the top of the head and then off to the side in that heart shape, that stimulates the circuitry that brings about radiance into the body. And so not only are you've got the breath bringing the parasympathetic online, the restorative healing function, and with the heart movement, you've got the radiant circuitry stimulated and activation of the heart chakra. And by bringing those two pieces together, you have a very super concentrated, supercharged way of accessing spirit. So it's not a mental masturbation. Oh, I should be thinking about God right now. No, you're actually working the nervous system, the oxygenation, the brain. You're bringing energy to the neocortex, and you're stimulating the extraordinary and radiant circuitry, all in that same moment. And that's what makes the flash shift so powerful. It's a combination, as you said earlier. It's a synthesis of some very advanced physiological and subtle anatomy work together. I've layered these different pieces together so that it has a power and it has a capacity to access the transformational world of the unifying field right in the moment. Now, it will not always, I'll just say quickly, so not to hype it too much, it won't always work, right? Or it won't work, it won't always be a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10, because sometimes we're so stressed and we're so anxious that the most we could get, is maybe a 5, an impact of a 5 out of a flash shift. But hey, a 5 is better than being at 1, right? And sometimes it'll just flow, and all of a sudden you'll have a peak experience, and you go, wow, in 1 minute I'm there. I'm with God. I'm with the presence. That song you opened with. I feel the presence, and that's when it's a glorious moment. And other times it'll be, well, at least I got a break, and the other place I want to set a proper expectation with the flash shift is that people, I've seen this over and over and over. I think this is a great fallacy. People want something that will not only work, but will stay around, will continue to work no matter what. And that is just an impossible expectation. There is no technique on this planet that you can do that will stay in place through the whole day. That there's too much going on. There's too many changes, too many riptides. So the point is to be able to get to that magical moment, and then you let it go. And you go back into your world and you do your thing, and you're going to fall right back into tunnel vision. Okay, it's not about not falling in tunnel vision. It's about being able to break out of tunnel vision when you want it throughout the day, easily and simply.
You bring up, you just hit on a really key phrase for me, which is let it go. So many people are trained, you get that spiritual experience, you get that connection, and you don't ever let it go. You hold on to that.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think that's impossible. I mean, it's just not real. And people are frustrated by that. They think that's their expectation, and when it doesn't happen, they think, "Damn, the tool doesn't work." Instead of figuring out the nature of reality is that we find it and we lose it, and we find it and we lose it. But the flash shift gives us the capacity to find it in a moment, and that is plenty powerful enough because, hey, guess what? We're going to lose it again. But that's okay because we can find it again easily and simply.
And the thing with that is it's like anything that we hold too tightly onto, we're bound to suffocate it and lose it anyways. So no matter how you try to hold on to it, you can't. It's just like even if you're with a person, if you try to hold on too tightly, you're going to suffocate them. They're going to look elsewhere. They're trying to get away. And only when you let go can it actually stay with you, ironically.
Yes, that's exactly right. And being willing to recognize the reality of the lost and found throughout the day. You know, our consciousness, anyone who's worked with mindfulness or even in meditation, it's like, you know, you're constantly losing the mantra or the visualization or the yantra or whatever it is that you're meditating on, and it's like whenever you lose it, the teaching again and again is to just come back to the mantra, you know, and don't beat yourself up because you lost the mantra for a while or you went off and figured out what you need to get at the grocery store today. No, you just come back to the mantra, and so it's that constantly coming back to source, you know, and so instead of having that concentrated experience in meditation for 20 minutes and then leaving the meditative space and going into the world and losing it all day, now you've got, with the flash shift, an easy, simple, fun way to come back to it in under a minute throughout the day and go, oh, I found it again. Oh, there's the magic. Oh, there's God. Oh, I can feel connected to all that is. Oh, I do feel my essence. Wow, that feels so good.
And it's interesting, and you say this, keep coming back, and you touched as well on the aspect of, I think so many people put pressure on themselves that I've got to do this and I've got to stick with it, instead of going, hey, if it leaves, that's fine, I just come back to it. That takes a lot of pressure off when you're doing meditation or imagery. And in all the major belief systems that I've looked at, different realms of spirituality practice and things, one of the biggest emphasis that they put on there is you make the connection, you know it, and then you let it go, because until you let it go, it can't actually manifest for you.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And Abraham Hicks talks about that in the art and science of manifesting. There's the intentionality of the manifestation, and then there's the letting go and letting it happen. And that is such a vital principle. And one of the ways that I weave that into the flash shift so it becomes even more powerful. So we've got the 6-count breath, we've got the heart movement, and then I also like to layer in a particular use of the mind. And one of the ways that I layer that in is when you're doing the heart shift, the flash shift. with the movement and the breath. At the same time, you can be saying to yourself, I am not the doer. And there's something very profound in that, of I am not the doer, because in tunnel vision, we and the ego wants to be the doer. It thinks it has to do everything, and that's where we lose our connection to the larger forces that we can co-create with. So when you say to yourself, you do the flash shift and you say to yourself, think to yourself, I am not the doer. You pull out from your computer the project and you go, I am not the doer. You know, and Christ said, you know, it is I of mine own self can do nothing. It is the Father in me that doeth the work. It's the same idea that when we stop thinking that we're the doer and can open up to the larger universal forces that are, you know, Abraham Hicks talks about, that created universes, right? And we can co-create with those. We can connect with those. We can be feel a sense of participation with those forces in the project we're doing, the message we're trying to get out to the world, the ways that we want to help and contribute in our lives and make money. So that I am not the doer. You know, I'm letting go right now. I'm letting go to a bigger picture. I'm letting go to the co-creation of the universe and me working together. All of a sudden, that gives the flash shift yet another layer of power. So it's a very supercharged moment when you add the breath, the heart movement, and the thought, I am not the doer.
Absolutely. I think that's just a great awareness, and I can see where these layers are coming in piece by piece by piece.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
With it all.
Really what I want to do, because I'm dedicated to an integral practice, to the concept of an integral practice, meaning physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being, that I have layered in something from each of those realms into the flash shift. So in that minute, you're attending to your physicality, your emotional flow, your mental clarity, and your spiritual presence. And we just, I've done 3 of the 4. And so you can begin to see how the flash shift is a very powerful, potent combination of forces that you can do in under a minute. And by the way, have a blast doing them. This is good stuff. This is fun stuff. This is not like you said earlier, this takes the pressure off because you don't have to hold on to it. You get the hit of it, and then you realize you're going to fall back in tunnel vision. Okay, because I can get another gulp of God whenever I want it. And so that there's an ease about one's day when I realize, oh my God, I can have it anytime I want. All I have to do is do a flash shift, you know, and it opens up the richness of life, because one is not spending all their time in tunnel vision or, you know, trying to meditate. I mean, that's fine too, but it's throughout the day weaving in spirit, weaving in this richness, this integral approach to life itself, easily and simply. It's a wonderful thing.
It really is, and I like your concept of weaving spirit into your day.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably a much more tangible concept for a lot of people, to think that I'm not supposed to take spirit, hold on to it all day long, and carry it on my back all day long, but that I'm supposed to allow it to flow in and out throughout the day.
Like the breath. You know, the breath is the paradigm of that. We were given this amazing fundamental activity of life itself. Without breath, there is no life. It happens the moment we're born, and it ends at death. And the breath is this flow of spirit in and out all day, every day. It's just that we're not conscious of it. But if we become conscious of that, and not even to do it, not even all day, not even, but through the day, when we want, or when we, and by the way, for someone that may be listening to this, one of the ways that I encourage people in the beginning to get the flash shift and to work it and to have it become a really fun thing that's almost kind of automatic and just basically occurs to you, in the middle of the day at 4:43, you suddenly think, oh, wow, I'd like to take a flash shift right now. But to get to that point, because we're in tunnel vision so much, I encourage people to set a reminder on their smartphone or on their computer that will interrupt them in the workflow, and you've got to be willing to be interrupted, to come out of tunnel vision for a minute, to then that willingness to be interrupted, so your smartphone beeps at you or dings, or there's a Tibetan bell or whatever, and there's all kinds of programs applications you can put on your smartphone that will remind you whenever you want, or periodically, or even randomly through the day, to take the flash shift. When you see it on your smartphone beside your computer, and you're in the middle of typing out that email, to get your book launched, you can either say at that moment, well, I'll do the flash shift in a minute, I want to finish this email, or you can go, you know what, great time to take the flash shift. Let me push back from the desk. Maybe I even stand up. I take my breath. I do my heart movement, and I think I am not the doer. And in that minute, all the universe rushes into you and gives you this the gift of that moment that you weren't realizing because you're in tunnel vision, and so you're all you're in a one-dimensional world, and all of a sudden the universe rushes in the flash shift, and you go, whoa, wow, that's great, I love this, and then you go back to work, So that's that weaving that spirit in, like you're talking about, through the day, easily and simply. And I'm just suggesting that you could actually set a timer to do that and kind of to build that habit.
I had a couple of thoughts going through my mind of how you could, do this with kids, and you make this little thing that you do at the beginning and the end of the day, and before you sit down for dinner or whatever, that it just kind of together, and they could have fun making this heart around them.
Kids love this. The making of the heart is the fun thing, and the breathing, is really beautiful and fun for them, and they like that movement quality. Well, hey, adult, once you get into it, you'll see how much your body likes making that heart movement. I hope you're doing it right now, and the listeners are doing it right now periodically as we talk about this. I'm sure doing it. And then there's one more kind of piece that I want to reveal here in the flash shift, and that is there's a way that when you pull out of that tunnel vision, pull out of your project, pull out of your human doing in that moment, you take those breaths that we've talked about, you make that heart movement, you think, I am not the doer. And then at that point, you open yourself to say, what does the universe want to gift me right now? And you're open, you've got the heart, the radiant circuits open, you've got the parasympathetic nervous system, the brain lock is off, and you're asking, you realize you're not the human doer, you're not the doer, and now you're asking the question, I'll repeat it again, what does the universe want to give me as a gift right now? And in that openness, you're going to get, amazing things. Every time will be different. Sometimes you'll have an intensification of the now. You'll suddenly hear the birds that were outside the window you had completely ignored, and the richness of their song. Sometimes the universe will gift you with a feeling of being embodied, and you realized, wow, I was not in my body, and I'm in my body now, and I'm grounded, and that feels so good. At other times, the gift of the universe in that moment will, as you open to it, will give you a sense of the vastness of evolution itself, and that you're part of the stardust that came out of the Big Bang. And every time you open to what is the gift the universe is giving me right now, it's a new and marvelous richness that you get. And in that moment, guess what? You are fulfilled. And guess what? That all the success and all the striving, is for what? It's to feel that sense of fulfillment, of oneness, of connection with the universe, of the richness of life. And there it is in a flash shift. And every time it's different. And so every time it's fun to ask that question in a flash shift. Wow, what does the universe want to gift with me right now? And boom, you have this miracle of a gift that's being given to you in that moment of the flash shift.
And it's a great way, too, to just drop us into that flow of abundance with us, where people get so stagnant and stressed and everything because things aren't flowing in. This is a perfect way to keep that flow of abundance and that flow of receiving in that we struggle with a lot of times. We are winding down to the last few minutes because I do have a couple of things I have to squeeze in here at the end of the show.
Sure.
Frederic, please share with people. I know that they can go to your website, theflashshift.com, and sign up and get.
Well, that's the main thing is theflashshift.com. Easy to remember. Flashshift.com, one word, and they'll find more information there. They'll find ways to contact me. They'll find different aspects of this that we've been talking about, and I would hope that they would reach out to me, put themselves on my mailing list so we can be in contact. And I've just loved this interview, Jesse. You just set up a wonderful format. I was a little bit, thinking, God, an hour and a half is too long, but it's it was wonderful to have the leisurely to unfold the richness of our discussion. So I thank you for that.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure here, and the time just flew. I kind of look up and was like, oh my gosh, I've got to start getting things in.
I know.
It's such
a pleasure. Wonderful. Thank you.
Share this work with people, and I do encourage people to go to your site. You've also authored a book, Between Two Worlds, The Riddle of Wholeness. You've also
Correct.
got a book of poetry out. You've done photography work, which is very interesting as well. So both of your website links are at the bottom of the show description for people to take advantage of and to do this. And I know that we had some people pop in late, and certainly I know they will go back and listen to this in the archives to catch the parts that they missed before they got here. But
great.
This is exciting. I absolutely love what you're doing here.
Thank you so much. It's been you have a way of interviewing that draws it out. So I hand it back to you, dear.
Well, thank you so much, and again, it's a real pleasure. We've been talking with Dr. Frederic Weidemann here this evening, sharing his work in the Flash Shift. And as I mentioned, if you missed any part of this show, you definitely want to go back and catch the archives because he's shared some really wonderful information and some incredible concepts, and really has focused in on how to bring together that physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual all together in one single minute that we can do anytime, anywhere, and get that connection, have spirit weaving in and out of our day. Just beautiful concepts there tonight. Again, I thank him for his time very, very much. And next week on our show, I will have Dr. Glenn Hepker on. He's going to be discussing his work with A Glimpse of Heaven, delving into true and total health and well-being for our entire self. And I know a lot of times I have females on the show, but right now I'm going through a period of having all these wonderful men doing these incredible works that they're sharing with us. So I hope you'll definitely tune in next week and catch that show. Again, my next set of books, which are based on relationships, I'm working on getting those out. I will let you know as soon as they are available for purchase and when they're ready for you and they're actually up and available. I have kind of finished out a lot of events other than I do have the Matriarch Gathering going on in Colorado coming up the first weekend of October, and if you'd like to find out more about that, I'm speaking at that conference. It is a weekend of events, wonderful speakers there, and you can find out about that at thematriarchgathering.com. And I'm also working on putting together stuff for a Compassion Tour next year as well, starting and thinking about, I've got an interview in Santa Barbara, which you're welcome to come in and watch the taping of that. If you'd like to do that, there will also be book signings and workshops that will be going on around that time while I'm out in that area. And you can follow and stay on top of my workshops at jessieannnicholsgeorge.eventbrite.com. Also, if you'd like to find out more about the work I'm doing or connect with me, you can check out my blog, products, services, small videos that I have up with tips on them. All of those things are available on my website at jessieannnicholsgeorge1. That's the number 1.com. That's also at the bottom of our show description today. And there's also a great section there for Main Street Universe where you can follow all of our hosts, catch upcoming shows as well as our archived shows, learn a little bit about the people that are a part of Main Street Universe here. And this information, again, it's listed at the bottom of the show description. The special that I have running for the month of September, I think you're going to absolutely love this. It's where you can get a special with my latest service, which is online courses going on. I'm offering a free course when you pay for 2. So simply sign up and complete 2 courses, and you will get a third absolutely free. And all you need to do is email me letting me know of the course that you want to take for free after you've registered for the other 2. You can choose upcoming courses or ones that are available as a recording. I just finished some great ones on communications and letting go and actually how to put the ego to work for you. In there's valuable uses for it. And so that's going to be a great thing. And once you've, again, completed your paid courses, then you'll be issued a code to use for your free course. And to find out what those courses are, you'll simply go to learnitlive.com/invite/Jessie-Ann-Nichols-George. And that's a great thing. And then, of course, my email is jessie@jessie-annnicholsgeorge1.com. And again, that's the latest service that I've started providing. And actually, a lot of those courses are in the $10 to $25 range. There is one that's a higher course. It's a much longer course on communications. So check it out. See what works for you on there. I've also want to mention that we've got several shows here on Main Street Universe throughout the week. Sunday nights we have Darren Bouquet, who's a reader at Madame Laveau in New Orleans. He does spiritual insights, a little bit of discussion. He also does some great readings. The last show he did had a special reading layout spread that he was doing, and that was quite interesting. Monday nights we have Kevin Baird walking on the sidewalk with his Horizon Oracle Journeys deck, a deck he created. You can learn more about that deck at templeofgaia.com. Tuesdays we now have Susan Weed, who is sharing her work in herbs and natural plants. Wednesday nights is our flagship show here with Daniel, Janice, and Brett. They've got interesting guests that they've been having on lately, as well as discussions that they do on that show. Thursdays is Queen Mother Amaku, and she discussed her work with Egyptian culture. And, of course, Friday nights right here at midnight is Activating Compassion in the Midnight Hour with yours truly, Jessie-Ann Nichols-George. I want to thank you so much for being here tonight. I look forward to seeing you back here next week as we delve more into activating compassion. And don't forget, if you've enjoyed my show this evening, to share it with others. It's going to be available at the same link in our archives. And I'm going to leave you tonight with the song Yearning For, also known as Over and Over by Shem Shai. And thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you again next week, right here on Activating Compassion in the Midnight Hour. May you enjoy the rest of your weekend and have an amazing week.
And if I could see what makes me blind, I would soar to the edge of my mind, and to touch what seems unreal, just to show you the way that I feel. And we are in time with time, one with the season of change inside. And we are in tune with the tune, caught in a balance of sun and moon. Oh, deep inside, the light within, shining to show you it's here to begin. When all I have is all I need, I will soar to the edge of eternity. And we see it eye to eye, one within love to be for the divine. And we're walking hand in hand, caught in the balance of God and man. Over and over, life is your lover, learning to walk just a little bit slower, whispering secrets, but that you can't keep it. No turning back now, this time we reveal it. One to another, all will discover the essence within the most beautiful lover. Time is still turning, the love is still burning. Deep in your spirit, your heart is still yearning for. Yearning for. Deep in your spirit, your heart is still yearning for. Over and over.